Well, thank you all so much for joining us today for this Changer Chat. I am joined today by a really special changer, Miss Debbie Waggoner. Debbie, thank you so much for being on the Changer Chat today.
Well, thank you, Courtney.
So, Debbie has a really unique story. She has been on several trips. She has gotten to see lots of places. She's interacted with a lot of you who are probably listening today, which is very exciting and very cool. But I wanted to make sure we captured and shared this story. So, I want to start by just asking, how did you get connected to Be the Change Volunteers?
I was working with a different nonprofit, and we served in two little villages in Malawi, Africa. The founder of that nonprofit asked me to meet with Jimmy and Christy about Be the Change, joining us to build a library and work on the school and the community. So I did that and was just blown away by their story and their passion for education and getting kids the opportunities that we take for granted. And they did agree to work with us. So we made all the arrangements. And I think that was in 2010. And the build was going to be in 2011. And I worked on the catastrophe team for a major insurance company. And it was a bad year for storms. And 3 weeks before we were to leave, my boss came to me and said, "I can't let you go." And like, I've paid for it. I'm ready to go. And he said, "No, I have no one to cover for you. You can't go." So I contacted the cooks and told them I couldn't go. And Jimmy said, well, he had just met with a guy who had some construction background, which I did not have. And he wanted to go, and would it be okay if he took my place and used my plane ticket, which was easier done back then? And I, of course, do that. Well, that person was Grant Venable, who is now our director of change. And that was his first build.
I think that's just so special. I love
Yes.
that story. And I love how God works out all the little details in life to put people at the right place at the right time. And just, and I love also that piece of the story where it's something that felt bad that was used for good.
Exactly. Some things are just meant to be.
Yes, it is. And all things work together for the good that those that love the Lord. And I just love that piece of your story. And you had mentioned something funny about meeting Grant prior.
When he and Rachel were living in Columbia, they went to the same church that I went to, and he volunteered to be on the greeter team, and I led the greeter team. And he would come and we would have conversations, but I don't think he ever remembered that. But I did, because he was funny and he was personable and he was a big guy. And our talks meant a lot to me. So
Well,
that's when I first met him.
I think that's just wonderful. And I love how those little pieces of the story goes together. So I want to know this fun fact. How many builds have you been on?
I've been on 21 builds and two post-build visits, and then a large book delivery to a home for troubled teens in Kansas City.
Oh, did you
So
go to the Oznam trip?
I did.
Oh my gosh. I
Yeah.
didn't even catch that on our first chat.
I don't think I mentioned it when we talked before.
Oh, that's so special to me.
Yeah.
That's an organization is very special to our heart. My husband worked there when he was in high school. So he mowed their lawn. So that's so
Oh,
special.
those kids. I mean, one little boy said, "Is there a book about turtles?" So we started digging through the boxes till we found a book about turtles, and he was so excited.
You know, I don't think people know that about Be the Change, that their reach is not just international, but it's national and local. And that is such an interesting organization that helps kids that are misplaced and kids that, just have come from a really troubled background. And
Yeah,
that's just really special. I didn't know you were on that delivery.
I was.
Well, you've been on, I think, probably the most trips of anyone I know, and if anyone I've talked to, but I would love to hear about your very first trip. Where did you go and what did you do?
Okay, the first trip was to Bihar, India, to the Fact Academy, and that's up in the northeast part of India. The community had already put up the foundation, and we went in and worked to build the first floor, carrying bricks and carrying concrete or carrying sand and rocks to make concrete, and then carrying the concrete in to be poured into a floor. But the first thing we cleaned bamboo and cut bamboo. But the first thing when Linda and I got out of the vehicle, Grant said, "Y'all dig a fish pond." And we just kind of looked at him. He had a little circle drawn. And he said, "Start here, dig a fish pond." So we're digging and digging, and there's a crowd gathered around. And this young lady who spoke really good English said, "Nobody can believe they're making the old woman work." And I stood straight and I'm like, "What a woman." And I'm looking around. And she looked at me and she goes, "You." I thought Linda was going to die laughing. But we dug a fish pond.
That's fantastic.
And it really opened my eyes to the different way cultures look at people. At 59 or 60, I did not consider myself old, but they all did. So
Yeah.
it really, different cultures look at people in different ways.
Yeah, they do. That's a fun story. And you did other things there. I mean, in India, you carried bricks and
We carried bricks. We sifted sand for concrete, cutting bamboo. I didn't actually cut the bamboo, but I helped clean the bamboo. Once you get it, you have to clean up all the notches and clean up the inside. We cut it into slats of about an inch wide, and then we're weaving them together, thinking it was going to be a wall, but it was used for a scaffold for the bricklayers.
Oh, wow.
So bamboo is really tough.
Isn't that something though that they had to have the tools built to make the build happen? That's really amazing.
True.
So you also mentioned you went on 2 post-visit interviews. Tell us about that and why are those really so important to what Be the Change does?
Yeah, we try to do that, I believe, with every school. We go in and we talk to the students, teachers, parents, administrators, and community leaders. With the kids, we ask them how things are going, what their favorite subject is, what do they want to do when they get out of school, typical things you ask a student. And then we ask them, are the classes you're taking preparing you? And if not, what classes do you need? We ask the teachers, what do they need? And what's working well, what could be improved. And the same with the parents, are their kids getting a good education? And the community leaders, we walk around the schools to see how it's being maintained. We look at attendance records to see that it's sustainable. And that's all important because it provides dialogue on what the future might look like for the school and what the future needs, both financially and building wise, what those are going to be.
I mean, I love that too, because I feel like that's one of our, as a changer and as an organization, one of our commitments to our donors is taking a look at what has happened with that donation and giving feedback back to the donors. I know Grant put some of that stuff in newsletters and things like that. So we're always communicating back to the population that's giving us money so that we're showing them, hey, this isn't just about a build and a trip. This is really about an ongoing partnership and showing them that this has gone back to the community and the community owns and manages it. You mentioned that on one of our calls that it's most effective when they own it, right?
It is. And like when we went in one of the indie builds, they had built teacher housing. In Malawi, they had built teacher housing without our input, without us asking them to do it. So it's showing their buy-in. It's like Habitat for Humanity. We build a house and it helps a family. When we do the schools, it's helping the whole community. And they're buying in and working as hard as we are, if not harder.
That's really wonderful. I love that. So you have a couple of fun little nicknames that came out in our conversation. One of them is Debbie Poppins, which was my favorite, and the other one was Mom or Mama. Tell me a little bit about those. How did you get those nicknames? And who calls you that?
Well, Debbie Poppins, when we go on a build, I take too much of everything. And when people say, well, I don't have work gloves, I don't have this, I don't have nail clippers, usually I will have whatever they need in my bag. And somebody says kind of like Mary Poppins. So we're going to call you Debbie Poppins, which is what Jimmy Cook calls me all the time. A lot of people call me that. Mom, this always gets to me. Gulshan is a wonderful guy who is one of our translators and just a wonderful guy who helps us do everything in India. And the end of the day of the first build, he came to me and said that when he became a Christian, his family completely disowned him. They won't talk to him. They won't have anything to do with him. And he looked at me and he goes, so I have no mother. And I'm crying. And he goes, can I call you Mom? And from then on, the teachers in India call me Mom. Changers call me Mom or Debbie Mama or Mama Debbie. One guy calls me Mama Pop, which kind of combines the two.
Yeah.
But it just kind of stuck with a lot of people. But almost everybody calls me Mama Deb or Debbie Mama or Mary or Debbie Poppins.
Well, that speaks to not only your character, but your care, and how you take care of everyone on the trips and you care for them. And I think you mentioned that Gulshan's kids even call you grandma.
And he has one little boy,
Uh-huh.
Emmanuel. He does call me grandma.
How fun is that? And I love how that's that changer community. It's not just this group of Americans that are going over. He's become part of the changer family too.
He is.
It's so special. So tell me a little bit about where is your favorite place and why is it your favorite place? Because you've been a lot of places.
That's probably one of the hardest questions because every place is different and every place has wonderful things about it and great memories and great people. But I guess I have to go back to India. It was my first build. The relationships that I've built there, I feel are really deep. And I've been there the most times. But I see how the people there work hard to make that school a success. And it's gone from a bare foundation to 3 stories with teacher housing, a library. But the people make it really special.
They do. Now, your story is all connected. So not just this Debbie that's been Debbie Mama since, the last 21 trips, but tell me a little bit about your growing up and how it connects you to the vision and mission of Be the Change and your thoughts about education, and just share a little bit about your story with our audience.
I grew up in a really small town. It was under 2,000 people when I was growing up, and very small school. My brother excelled in education. I did not. My thoughts on school was this is a social thing. You got to have friends. You got to belong to all the clubs. And my parents told me, you're going to college, and this is where you're going. And I didn't want to go, but they never had that opportunity. So they made me go to college. And as I grew up, I realized that people who had education had better jobs, had more opportunities, were more successful to a point. And then I talked to the Cooks and heard them and their passion for education and how it will take these kids who are in poverty and help them get jobs. And it could be in Uganda, it's a trade school. And others, they get into university and they can make differences in themselves and their family. And that just made me realize how kids in America complain about having to go to school, and those kids can't wait to go to school. They just want to go and want the opportunity. And other than that, my parents taught me about giving. Their whole thing was to give back to the community. And I worked in the drugstore with my mom, and she taught me paying it forward before there was ever a movie about it. Somebody would not have enough money for their medicine. She would pay for it. And they'd say, well, I'll pay it back. She's no, do something for somebody else. And I've just learned that when you give, you get so much more. And my parents taught me that by their example. And when you see a teacher in a hot place where you're building desk and she's standing by her desk, running her hand over it and crying, and somebody said, are you okay? And she goes, I feel like a teacher. I have a desk. And you realize that she's going to be a better teacher. The kids are going to get a better education. Life is going to be better. Or you go to another school where you see a little girl run into a new classroom with freshly paint and new desk, and she grabs a book with a little girl who looks like her on front of it and clutches it to her chest. How can you not do that? How can you say no?
I don't know. Debbie, you are just the most warm and wonderful person to talk to. I have been just so touched by all the changers that I get to talk to, and you've been so special, because even when we did our pre-chat, I could feel your heart and your love for everything you were doing. And I think you are a great example for all of our young people and the people that are listening to this program, but the young people that go on these builds, and that's why they call you mama. You should want to be like your mama, and they want to be like you. And
Thank you.
I just appreciate all your giving and all you've done for Be the Change volunteers. And, I hope people get to go on a build with you soon. And I hope we get to meet in person soon.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You've been very kind.
So, well, that concludes this wonderful episode of the Changer Chat. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please go to bethechangevolunteers.org and subscribe to our newsletter so that you can get our newsletter and you can get these Changer Chats emailed to you. I encourage you to support Be the Change volunteers financially, with your actions. We say time, treasure, and talent. Jimmy said that on our interview. There's all sorts of ways you can get involved and be the change that you want to see in the world. Don't complain, be the change. Thanks so much, everybody, and hope to see you next time.